All right, welcome in everyone. Gonna be doing a little Friday fun day, Friday freestyle here. So yeah, let's just get it started off hot. Richie, do you think phones are making us dumber or smarter overall?
Um, I think honestly, what I think they're doing is expanding the bell curve so that, depending on the person, some people might be getting way smarter because they're using it strictly for like they're super disciplined using their phone only for, research and productive purposes. And then other people are probably just absolutely hooked on just watching like reels and brain rot shit all day. And so it's just expanding. It depends on the person, depends on how they
Uh-huh.
use it. But I don't, I don't know. What do you think?
So I was seeing something pretty interesting on that. It's like, so we have our phones and we have Google Maps on there, just say, right? Google Maps, I have gone across the fucking world, gotten to a random hostel in the middle of Amsterdam, met up with my friends seamlessly with Google Maps, right? Does that make me a better navigator than, say, our parents' generation was, or, people in the 1900s or 1700s? Not really, right? You're not gaining the tools of navigation, right? You're not like learning how to find your way better. You're just completely dependent on this technological appendage, right? So like even dude driving around like my neighborhood, I'm pretty bad at knowing like streets and stuff. Any parent you ask, they're like, "Oh, how'd you get here today? Did you take 57 to 355 over to 90, cut left at the bank there?" It's like, "Or did you go, 286 around, go east west?" Like I don't know any of that. I type in the directions and it takes me exactly where I'm looking to go.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Even just roads that I go down all the time. So it's like I don't even know what that I don't know what that is. Or yeah, like even just going over to like a friend's house who lives nearby, you've been to his house many times. I'll still need the map a lot of times, or maybe I could figure out how to get there without it, but I'll just throw it on. Just it's like makes it easier. So yeah, when it comes to actually knowing how to navigate around. I feel like our entire generation and all of the future generations are absolutely terrible at it. But it's like also, is there even a point of having that skill anymore when I mean, I guess if when the internet goes down during the
Right.
next apocalypse, those are going to be the people who are running things. But
So, yeah, no. Like could you drive from your place in the city to your parents' house without Google Maps?
yeah, like I probably could, but I'm not going to try.
Right. It's just crazy. Like you've probably made that drive like dozens of times, whatever, right? And you know the way and whatever, but you always have it there as, kind of like your backup, your navigator essentially. And then here's another one, like ChatGPT, right? And this is gonna lead into what I think you were saying, with like the bell curve or whatever. It's an amazing tool, right? It can help you create things that you wouldn't be able to. I'd say you're not a great coder. It can like help you, with programming stuff like that. I'm pretty glad that I graduated college before ChatGPT became a thing because like it'll do everything for you essentially, right? Like are people like really learning that much better or are they having ChatGPT do the learning for them and essentially stealing its credit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's especially too because think about this too. Like, I remember being in college and learning about a lot of stuff that some of it or a lot of it probably not really that relevant to real life. Some of it probably was, but the purpose of learning it was not to become, really good at my job and make more money and have, or to talk about it on a podcast. It was to pass the test or to get my homework done. And so if ChatGPT was a thing, I 100% would have just had it do everything for me, and I never would have learned anything because it was all about just passing. All right, I got to get this done so I can go out and party.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like now, see, like if it were around back then, it would have been a total. It would have been a negative for me personally, like my personal development. Now, most of the time when I'm using it, it's actually like it's not to have it do the work for me, or if it can do some of the work for me, that's like busy work and stuff, then great. It doesn't matter. My boss isn't going to care who did it. He just
Right.
wants it done. but a lot of times what I'll use it now is to like actually kind of understand something to help me understand something at a deeper level, stuff like that. Whereas like yeah, right, like that just comes with, kind of getting older and having
with
more of a purpose and
age a little bit, right? Wisdom, experience, and kind of what you're just saying. Yeah, like not using it for, all right, I got to write this English paper about like, Othello, right? Like something that you're not very interested in, but ChatGPT can help you whip it out in like 20 minutes or whatever, versus when we were talking about the Triffin dilemma the other day, it's like, all right, like this can actually help me understand some of these high concepts a little bit better.
yeah, exactly. I think that's the key right there is just like what if you're using it to learn something that you're interested in or that you're like curious about, you want to learn it, or if you're trying to figure out something that you might be trying to come up with your own idea of something rather than just copying what you read in the textbook or something, then it's great. But I think what really needs to happen then is that the school system needs to adapt. And I know we've talked about this before. The school system needs to adapt to stop making it all about reading something out of a textbook and then make copying the ideas onto a paper.
Yeah, no. So that's just like navigation, like one example. Here's another one, just like having all of the answers at your fingertips. You would think that makes you smarter, but like what's your retention level of all these things that you Google, Like Google's still going to be there like a month later when you have the same question, right? Like I feel like the phones almost might just be like our attention spans, whatever, just like our like bandwidth is almost just smaller because there's so much information out there.
Yeah, that's definitely. I've noticed that a little bit myself too. It's kind of like a dopamine hit too when getting the phone notifications and stuff, where it's like the length of time you go between dopamine hits is going to continue to shrink, especially when you're doing something boring like at work or like it's like your brain needs some type of simulation or stimulation, and so that that instinct of going to your phone, it's almost like involuntary, and then yeah, then it becomes where your attention span can your mind only gets used to paying attention to something for shorter and shorter periods of time before needing that hit. And so eventually like sitting and like watching a movie, it's like like I can do it if I'm before bed or something, but sometimes I'll even catch myself, and I don't even think I'm too bad when it comes to the phone, but sometimes I'll just like catch myself and be like watching a movie and then just like picking up my phone and like checking, social media or
Oh,
something.
it's
And it's
it's
like
terrible, yeah.
I'm like not paying attention to the movie because it got to a boring part and I needed something. And it's like it's crazy.
No, that I find myself doing that too. It's terrible. Another thing I find myself doing is say I'm on like TikTok or something and I've been scrolling for a while. I'll like close the app and then I'll like open up some other app for like 30 seconds and then go back to the first app that I was just on like 45 seconds later, as if like, oh, there's got to be some like fresh new stuff on the feed or whatever. It's crazy how like yeah, instant gratification has become.
Yeah. No, I mean and that is I don't know. I think that's just going to be the reality of the near future where there's not really anything not really any going back. I don't think. It's not like
Right,
we're like, oh,
right.
this is just a phase, and then eventually, like, the phones are going to become less addictive, and people are going to stop using social media and the internet. I don't think that happens unless there's like a crisis where we can't do it anymore, like the
It's
satellites go down or something.
it's interesting. This leads into like kind of the next question I was gonna have, very similar. But do you think phones are bringing people closer together or further apart? So then here's the
Yeah, I mean,
corollary, like social media. I think we brought this up. I brought this up before, but it used to be everyone like sharing ideas and like talking to their friends, interacting with their friends. Now, most of my social media is not full of people I know posting things. It's full of random people, like algorithms like manufactured for you. So there's not even like the social aspect of it anymore.
yeah, right. No, I agree. I barely ever see anyone I know, but yeah, well, I mean, so yes, I don't think social media is really bringing people together that much at all. Maybe I don't know. I'm not on Facebook. I feel like feel like my parents still have the classic version of social media where they still just like see their friends and stuff.
You're like, oh,
But
Aunt Gertrude posted this. Like,
yeah, yeah, I never see anything like that. But I think it's becoming like a different model of connection. It's almost becoming like the TV in a way, like the TV was, where you there's it still has some kind of a connective feature, which is that
mhm.
tomorrow at work or whatever day at work, I could be talking about, hey, did you see that video of that guy who did that crazy thing that
I was
everyone saw on their social media,
I was gonna bring up
It's
the
like the old water
100.
cooler talk.
I was gonna bring up the 100 people versus one gorilla debate, right? So like, like, so someone
Exactly.
didn't post that, but everyone that is talking about that together, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like one of those. But I mean, we had that before. It was just through the TV, and now there's
Mhm.
just now it's just shorter versions of that. Rather than like, did you see that 2 hour movie? It's like, did you see that 10-second thing?
Mhm. Another crazy aspect is just that I feel like people are like self-isolating a lot more with cell phones. Maybe it's still like some fallout from COVID, whatever, but it's just like it's just way too easy to like put yourself in your little sphere in your little box and like sequester yourself off from like the outside world. I feel like loneliness levels are rising rapidly in the US, I think in Europe as well. I think in Asia also.
I did see that too, that we're supposedly the loneliest generation. But I
Yeah.
don't, I'm also curious, I'll ask the overlords, I'm curious like how that's even measured, you know?
I think that's measured in like times like just going out with like peers.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Although, I mean, people are probably connecting over the internet. Like, honestly, which I don't really do that often, but a lot of my friends do is game. I feel like gaming is like
I was
the new form of like social connection for guys at least.
I was literally about to bring up I have a squad of friends that I play FIFA with. It's like everyone like hops on like, oh, we hopping on like, like tomorrow or whatever, right? And then you're on with like three, four people and like states away. Most of these guys live in like Texas. So it's crazy. Like I'm able to, communicate with them, do something together, right? It's like a group activity sort of deal, but you can still have that connection with people hundreds of miles away.
Yeah, so there's still stuff like that, which is
Right.
good. It's a different medium now. Well, and in times where there used to be no medium, where like if this was a symposium back in the day, we would be sitting right next to each other. There would be no medium. Right now, we're
Mm.
talking through a medium. It's kind of the same way, and I mean, obviously, there's not too much of a difference between the conversation we're having now versus if we were in the same room. But depending on the medium, it could be more isolating. Where like social media platforms, the medium has changed quite a bit. Where now it used to be the posts that would get the most attention were probably the posts by people who had the most friends and followers and people that they knew, and now it's like the people who can spark the most outrage, or it's like it's
Hmm.
all these actual like professional attention grabbers who are doing what they do on the medium and kind of taking it over. I think that's a big part of it. Kind of going off this too, a little bit different, but similar idea is the dating apps. I've been looking into the dating apps lately, not because I'm on the market, happily taken, but just for investing purposes, because kind of came across a little bit of a theory about how I think the dating apps are going to kind of continue to rise in value and be used more and more. And it was based on the idea that like between 1999 or something like that and now the amount of the amount of couples who met via dating apps has skyrocketed. Have you seen this one before? It's like it used to be like 5% or something, and now
Hmm.
it's over 70%, I think,
Over
which
70.
is
Wow.
huge. Or
I was
it
gonna
might be about it was definitely over 50. I think it was like in the 60s or
I was
70s.
gonna say like around like 50, 60 maybe. But yeah, it used to like like those like graphics where like the pie charts like rise or the bar graphs like rise and
Yes,
fall or whatever, right?
that's
So
exactly,
like
yeah, that was
yeah,
exactly
like
what I
up
saw. Yeah.
here it was always like through like friends and family. That was always like 60, 70% or whatever. And then it was like, like through like your like church or like other like community programs. And then like down here is like something else. But then yeah, like 50, 60%, maybe even as high as 70 is online dating now. which is crazy. It makes sense though. I mean, you have literally like the entire market of single people available on this cell phone versus going to a bar. There's like seven, eight, nine single people, right? So,
Hmm.
but so
Right.
what?
Well, so,
Go
sorry,
into
go ahead.
the algorithm a little bit on like why these dating apps are like continuing to still be around, essentially.
Well, so yeah, yeah. So when I was talking about the medium, it's all about the medium. What what's going on in the dating apps, and if if I'm sure it might not play out exactly in this type of dystopian way that you might see in like a sci-fi show or something, but if you were to look at it in the form of incentive structures, which we often do, and you look at these companies, now these are public companies owned by shareholders, and I'm kind of looking into each one, trying to see if I want to invest in them. And I'm coming across these metrics that they're using in their investor relations reports, and seeing that like repetitive customers and like daily average users, these are all metrics that they're using to show. They're saying, hey, look, we've got more repetitive customers this month than we did last month. This is a pitch to investors to come invest in them. What this means is that these companies are operating not to optimize matches because everyone goes on the dating app trying to find their perfect match. But if the dating app gives you your perfect match, they no longer can make money off of you. So why would they do that? Just like social media, their job is to keep you on the app as long as possible. And I don't know how far down the line their algorithms are. I know AI is coming in now. So I don't know really how much they actually can accurately do this at the point we're in. But I can see in the near future where the algorithm is actually designed to make sure that you don't find a match. It's designed to maybe match you with someone who you find attractive, but you won't have any common interests with. That way, you'll go on a couple dates and then you'll be right back on the app. That seems to be their motive, you know?
Yeah, so makes sense. It's maybe a little tinfoil hat conspiratorial sounding. Makes sense from a business prospect. Crazy to think, in my opinion, that they might even be like close to being able to implement that. Like if they're actually truly able to like have your like entire essentially like personality in like a data file and be able to accurately predict whether you will or will not connect with someone, right? I mean, before I think the way this it was worked is like you'd fill out like a questionnaire, something like what do you do for fun? It's like, oh, I like long walks on the beach as opposed to, like I don't know, like something like super high adrenaline filled, right? So then they'd try to match you with someone who, likes similar interests, like, like walks on the beach or whatever. So, that makes sense. But now how much data they might have down to like, like what you buy at the grocery store, like what types of movies and like films you watch, like what apps you use more than others, and like the amount of just pure raw data that they might be able to have in these systems is kind of scary.
Yeah, right. And that's why what one of my kind of conclusions was that I think as far as like Tinder goes, I kind of agree that they're probably not going to be able to be that accurate with like, oh yeah, we know everything about this guy based on his Tinder profile. Probably
Yeah.
not going to happen. But of
Also,
course, the
also,
wizard, Mark Zuckerberg has like Facebook matching now, which he's got all the data. So like he could actually,
right.
those type of big social media giants or like Google or these companies that are just data hoarders, all they have to do is like add a feature of like a matchmaking service, and then they can 100% do that. But I don't know that they would need to because they've already got you hooked on Facebook. So it doesn't matter if you're on Facebook or they're already making money off of
And,
you
and
from so many other ways.
here's the other thing with, like when you fill out your dating profile or whatever, you're basically like totally fronting most of it. It's like, oh, what do you
Yeah,
do for
yeah,
fun?
true.
Oh, I like hiking. I like working out. I like eating healthy. Like sure, people do enjoy that, but every single person you see enjoys hiking on dating apps. Like that's just crazy numbers.
Yeah, you're not seeing many like dating profiles like, yeah, I'm a raging alcoholic. I
Yeah, like
can't keep a job. Like,
I play video games nonstop. I don't really do anything socially.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
just Uber Eats every day, eat fast food.
Uber Eats. I don't enjoy cooking. I don't enjoy the finer things. Right.
That is true. Yeah, I can't imagine that most people are 100% honest in their dating ad bios.
I'm six
But it is kind of
one.
weird if like I mean if it continues on the trend it's going, we might see a time in our lifetimes where it would be considered like weird or like, kind of out of the ordinary if someone were to meet in person. You know how like when dating apps first started, it was kind of like like everyone would be
A
like,
little
oh yeah, oh we
taboo,
met on a
yeah.
dating app, yeah, a little taboo. That's the word I was looking for. But what if like when we're older, um, and we're looking down at like the teenagers and 20-year-olds, 20 years from now, and it's like to them it's taboo that you didn't meet through the date. Like, how do you even know that you're a good match? The app didn't even tell you that you were a good match. You're just guessing that you're a good match. Like,
Hmm.
huh, that seems weird. Like, you don't want an app to tell you who your good match should be because that's what everyone else does.
You ever seen you watch Black Mirror?
I have, yeah, I think I've seen most of them. I haven't watched it in a while, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I
this is an older one.
definitely
It's
watched most
it's
of them.
called San Junipero. It's the one. It's like the dating app one where like they put you into like an augmented reality, and then you're like matched up with a person, and however many times you like rebel against the simulation to like try and break out of the simulation, that's like how they like determine if you're like a good match or not. It's a really good episode. Like it's
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember that.
that
I don't really remember the details, but I do have,
it's pretty good.
I do think I've seen that one. Yeah, but I can see it going that way. It is crazy because when did Black Mirror come out? Like season one. It's been a while,
It's been a
probably like
while.
10 years. But I remember thinking like this was like a very futuristic, sci-fi, unrealistic show,
Hmm.
and there's not all, but some episodes seem to be much closer in the future than I would have ever get.
Well,
Yeah,
no, I was gonna say that basically that same thing. It starts off as like, oh, this is so crazy and out there, and now it's like that's almost the world we're living in for the most
yeah, we're
part.
just waiting for it to get a couple more steps down the line, and then we're
Like,
there. And the way it creeps up on you too, like we found ourselves where we are currently. If 10 years ago, I wouldn't have guessed that based on our technology and everything, that society would be the way it is now. And I can't really tell you a time that it happened. COVID maybe was a big step, but for the most part, it kind of just like slowly encroaches where 20 years ago, no one had an iPhone, and then it was like, oh, we got iPhones, and now it's a topic of conversation. Like, are these things destroying us? And
right,
it's like, oh, yeah, like it just very slowly just kind of evolves into another, like a whole different landscape.
day to day, nothing changes, but you look back and everything's different.
Yeah, yeah, it really sneaks up on you, and it goes to my whole theory where I kind of look at technology, not literally, but for the most part, it shares a lot of features with a species, really. Like there's a lot of theorists who talk about how we might be at the at a point where well, we kind of are at a point where technological evolution is overcoming biological evolution, and that if you were to zoom out and look at it as one big path where we started as what do they call them, shrews? We started as shrews and we evolved into what we are today. And they're saying how like, but this is just our job on this, our purpose on the world is to create the machines, and then they can take it from there. It's like, oh, okay, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's crazy because like 2,000 years ago, we are biologically basically the exact same. Even like, like 500 years ago, taking someone from 500 years ago, dropping them into today's society, it's complete and utter shell shock. Like it's a completely
Yeah.
different world. And the technological advancement is completely and utterly outpacing biological advancement by far. Even to the point where like people are like, "Oh, when will we merge with technology?" It's basically already happened. Do you ever leave your house without your smartphone?
Yeah, and
Like,
it's
like
getting
no,
more and
never.
more like
It's
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 becoming more
your
and more immersive. Like
it's your
now you
navigator.
got the
Like,
watch, soon you'll
uh-huh.
have the glasses. Eventually it'll be like we're just yes, exactly. We're merging, and the crazy one too is like nanotechnology. I don't know much about it, but I've just seen like
Uh,
little stuff about how like in the healthcare devices, all these like healthcare companies are developing these like nanotechnologies, which are basically like microscopic robots, microscopic machines that you would like inject into you, and they'll like, rather than having like like antibiotics, like fighting off the, whatever the sickness in your blood cells or whatever. I don't know. I don't know much about the bio side, but instead of having like a biological vaccine or medicine, it'll be like a little robot. It's has like computer chips in it that they inject into you that would then do the same job inside of you and then just dissolve in you. You know, like that type of
Hmm.
thing is crazy.
Well, so that's on like nanobots. One of the questions for, like, why don't we see any, like life out there in the universe is like the question a lot of people ask is like, all right, if technology keeps advancing and we're able to create nanobots essentially that are able to like self-replicate themselves, in theory you can like send them out to the stars, they can like go to distant planets, replicate themselves, build a like civilization which can then send out more nanobots to like like a self-replicating cycle. It's like, if life is like so easy to come across, why haven't we like seen anything like that? So like, has technology never advanced to that point in any other civilization? Is like biological life actually like super duper hard to get to? Like, there's like certain like hurdles that we don't know where, like the big cutoff really is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got to imagine that there is like I you've got to it makes the most sense I think that there is other life forms out there. What they are is, absolute mystery. It could be something that we can't even comprehend. But like the idea that there's just no other life, I mean, there of course there is, but why we haven't been able to find them yet? Maybe we're just like a lot dumber than we think we are, and like maybe they're not, maybe they're like so far more advanced than we are
Yeah.
that they're like they don't even like notice us, they're like, ah,
We're
yeah,
like
these are
we're
fine.
not an advanced species yet, right? So this is like the Fermi paradox is what this is called. It's like, where are the aliens, right? And one of my favorite theories to it is what you kind of just said. It's the worm theory, which is when you're walking down the sidewalk and you see a worm, you see it and you're like, oh, okay, it's just a worm. You keep going past. Like, you don't even comprehend that thing as like being on your level, right? So there could be
Yeah,
like inter
you don't try to communicate with it and
no,
teach it about your existence. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
You can't. It's a worm, right? There may be interdimensional species like flying all around at all times. They pass by Earth, they look out the window, they're like, oh, look at those little primates running around down there. Those things are kind of cute, and just like keep going.
yeah, yeah. I think that's possible, or that like we were just talking about the nanobots too. As you were saying that, I popped in my head like maybe they're because if we look at a lot of the technological evolution, like it always was the common kind of view of like things are going to keep getting bigger and bigger. Like, oh, like I bet a couple hundred years ago they would think, oh yeah, when we in the future, like houses are going to be way bigger. It's like, but realistically, think the real
Things are getting
technology that's changing is
smaller.
getting smaller. The
Uh-huh.
the computer chips is like how many can we fit? How many transistors can we fit on a chip? And it used to be like 100 was like a big deal, and now we've got like many billions or trillions even I think. And it's like so things keep getting smaller, nanobots keep getting smaller. Maybe like what it takes to, like intergalactically travel, if that's a thing that other life forms are doing, maybe they're just like real small. They're
Yeah.
nanobots or something.
There's like tiny.
Yeah, I mean, possibly that it's not about how big you can get, it's about how small.
Uh-huh. What else I got? So this one I was gonna segue when we were talking about the dating apps. Your basic idea was that dating apps are essentially incentivized to not get people good matching dates, right? So I wanted to ask you this question: did you see that United Healthcare is being sued?
No, I didn't see this one.
So, United Healthcare is the company of the CEO that was killed months ago or whatever. The Luigi Mangione guy, like, killed him over poor healthcare practices, right? After that, United Healthcare started changing some of their policies a little bit to, lower their like denial rate essentially, so they actually like treated more customers. Well, that caused their stock price to drop. Now their shareholders are suing them because,
Boom.
they didn't do
Fiduciary duty.
their fiduciary duty is exactly right to is beholden to them, not to the consumers. So, kind of in the same vein, this healthcare company is now under hot water for treating more people and helping more people when that's essentially not what their business model is.
Yep, I'm not surprised at all. That goes into like I've had this it sounds far fetched like a oh that's like a conspiracy theory kind of thing, but it's not a conspiracy, or it's not there is no conspiracy. It's literally just the law that you have to maximize value to the shareholders. That law is not written by an evil person. That was written by someone who was like trying to create good incentive structures at a time where the most high tech thing we had was maybe like I don't know, the steam engine or something.
Hmm.
And it's like now when the problem always is when the people who are supposedly being served by these companies are not actually the customers. They're not the ones paying. So it's like same thing with social media. What do you think would happen if Mark Zuckerberg started showing you things that were like good for you rather than like a bunch of like bullshit brain rot stuff that you're not actually going to get anything out of, but it's just going to keep you hooked on the screen. If Mark Zuckerberg said, you know what, people are getting too hooked on these screens, let's put a limit on the time you can spend, or like let's start changing the algorithms so that at least they're using their time productively. Illegal, can't do that. You've got to just continue doing whatever makes the most money, and that's like happening with as things get digitized. It's happening with more and more industries because like the digital world is based mostly on ad models. And
Hmm.
so the person's not the customer, the ad companies are. And so it's all about just getting you addicted, getting you hooked. The healthcare is a crazy one too. Do you know what exactly it was that they were doing that they tried to stop doing, or like what the policies were?
One of them was just that I saw like the denial rate. They essentially just like started accepting more like applications or whatever. So like they like loosened their parameters on what like actually fit into like an accepted like claim or whatever. I don't know like other ones aside from that, but
Well, so a good kind of a philosophical question or a political question kind of even is so when it comes down to it, so like, all right, obviously you've got a bunch of people when the Luigi Mangione thing happened, there was like a ton of people who are demonizing, like, look at who is the actual bad guy now? Remember how many people were saying, oh yeah, the United Healthcare CEO, this guy's an evil guy because he was denying all the things and doing all the stuff. And they say that about CEOs of all these companies. And it's like, but take a step back and realize like that guy's not a bad guy for doing that. He's doing what he has to do because of the position he's in. He didn't write the rules. He's constrained by the rules, and so
hmm.
he's acting on behalf of the company. Where I mean, we can't be like blaming the CEOs for things like that, but I mean, we can say like, okay, that we people don't say this, but I think it's a very fair way to look at it. It's like, okay, it's not that the system is bad or evil. The system was meant to be good, but it was made during a time where things were much different and things changed and now it's not working anymore, so we can change it, but it's like trying to point to the guy and be like trying to
Hmm.
find like whose fault is it, it's that guy's. I feel like
And
that's where
that's
people start going wrong and the conflict starts building up and nothing ever gets changed.
and that's the difference is it's so much easier to point the finger and say it's their fault, right? And to drive clicks attention towards not victim blaming, whatever, finding a scapegoat essentially, right? Versus it's much harder to restructure society, to like redo all of these existing things that we have that work pretty well for the most part. We have a functioning society, we have a civilization that like actually works for the most part, which is crazy. Like think about like how we have just roads like extending everywhere throughout our country. That's a pretty amazing feat, right? Like how we're able to do this through like division of labor and simply through like communication, it's incredible. And that's why it's so hard to change these structures, these like systematic things that we have built in because it's worked so well for so long, right? And that's the issue is it's so hard to actually come up with like what is a better way to do it. Like I don't really have the answer. No one probably does.
It usually doesn't happen until a crisis. Like
Right.
during COVID, there was a lot of like on the right wing Twitter and stuff. There was a lot of talk because there was a quote that Hillary Clinton was on video from years before, and she says on camera, she says, "Well, so never let a crisis go to waste." And during when COVID hit, and it was all political and everything, and the Democrats were trying to put all these laws in. One of the big talking points was like look at this whole thing is a hoax or it's exaggerated, and they're just using it to grab power. And if you want proof, here's the video of Hillary Clinton talking about it. And then she says, "Don't ever let a crisis go to waste." And that was a big talking point. But I looked at the full video, and it's kind of right, but the context is more along the lines of like, she's talking about how like if a crisis occurred, don't let it go to waste. Meaning like let's let's use it as an opportunity for change so that it doesn't occur again. So like she wasn't like
Yeah.
saying like yeah like we're gonna get super powerful because of this. She was saying like don't But I think that is probably the way that we see change is a crisis happens. And I remember thinking COVID was a big crisis. I still think it was, but I think in the near, and I'm talking 5 to 10 years, we're going to see probably another way bigger crisis because I think everything has been just building up to that for so long. It seems like it's like waiting for it's like playing a game of Jenga. It's like how much can we wear this
Mhm.
thing down before it all falls? I think we're getting there.
Yeah, I mean, what like Russia and Ukraine war still going on, I believe, right? Israel
Yep. Well, it
Palestine's going
seems like
on.
I saw something about how there was talks of peace negotiations in Ukraine. I don't know if they've actually been you know, signed and sealed, but it
Yeah.
seems like that one is heading in a better direction. I know Israel and Palestine, and
India,
then Pakistan and
Pakistan
India.
just
Yeah,
popped up. Do
yeah,
you
they
think
started.
what do you think the odds are we get into like a hot war with like China?
I think pretty. I'd say not not super low. I think maybe like 40%, maybe. I'd say there's like a solid chance.
Pretty damn high.
I think so, and it might not even. I mean, it depends. It might not necessarily be like a hot war where it's like we're gonna storm in and invade China, or they're gonna do it to us. But I mean, we might have. I guess what would we call it? Like troops on the ground, maybe in like Taiwan. I think that's most
Yeah.
likely, or like some other proxy country that we're kind of fighting over. I could see I could see it escalating. I think I think that that's part of I think it's just part of all the wars that we do see. I think they're kind of extensions of a global situation where the current incumbent global power is being challenged by a a rising opponent, which we
Hmm.
since 1990 we've been the only world power. No one could challenge us really. No one had this. No one was on our level, and all of a sudden now there is, and all these wars are breaking out. It's like a chain reaction events of like leading up to the big, the big headliner of
I mean,
USA versus China SmackDown.
because here's the thing is we you could consider us in something of a cold war right now with China or like a trade war is maybe a little bit more accurate like that. It seems way more likely that that is either gonna like de-escalate or honestly like China could just pretty easily like win this trade war, kind of like supplant us. If that happens though, I don't think the odds are very good that America would be able to not get into a hot war because we have such
Yeah,
an insanely good military. If we're
that's all
losing,
we got.
that's all we
Yeah,
got. Like
that's
we're
it.
like
That's our trump card right there. It's like,
we're,
oh yeah, throw the military at you.
we're losing. If we're losing, like the industry battle, the trade battle, I can't really see us being like, you know what, we're cool with being second banana now. Like we'll just like kind of take it. Like I think that's probably where it goes off the rails.
Yeah, and I think it does come down because part of it too is that the incentive structures have shifted so much since the last big hot wars that we were part of, whereas there's not that much to gain from the hot war because like back in the imperial days everything was all about land, and so
Uh-huh.
it's like no wonder the Napoleonic Wars and the British conquest and all this stuff was like all the time back then. It's like because the resource we were fighting over was land, but that's not the resource anymore. Now it's data and fiber optic cables and satellites. A lot of the real estate that we're fighting over is not even on the planet. It's up in space. You know, we're fighting over like who can have the most satellite surveillance systems, shit like that. And so like invading China like wouldn't really do us much. It still would, you know, we'd still win the war, but it would be like it would hurt us more than it would help us probably. And so I think yeah, that's why we see like trade wars or cyber wars, all this type of stuff, because it's just like the incentive structures align more to go that way.
Hmm. I mean, really, our the idea would probably be for us to like go in and like what like blow up their like manufacturing facilities essentially. So then it's like, yeah, fuck you, manufacturing powerhouse, the world no more.
I mean, but that hurts us too. Like
Yeah,
we're the ones who buy the stuff from the
yeah, that's
manufacturers. Like that
that's
we don't,
true.
you know, like that wouldn't do us any good. I think what's gonna so this is what if I were to make a prediction, I think what's most likely if a war were to occur, I think this is the reason why. I think it would happen in Taiwan, and I think what would happen is because so the Chinese government basically, what's the word? They acknowledge Taiwan as part of China,
Hmm.
but but Taiwan acknowledges itself as separate from China, and so there's kind of like some people who you can tell very easily when you see people from like the World Economic Forum or like these world organizations, you can see who's siding with China very easily is if they won't recognize Taiwan as its independent country. If they do, then they're on our side. If they don't, then they're on China's side. What's probably going to happen is because of Taiwan Semiconductor, the massive chip fabricator that basically like the entire global economy is relying on is based in Taiwan. That's the hot point right there. And I because China's so close there, they're already practicing in the off the shores near Taiwan, doing military drills, stuff like that. I think they're going to just try to claim like, oh yeah, Taiwan is ours, and they're gonna place their military, occupy Taiwan. They're gonna try to do that. If they do that, I think that's when we would send the troops in because
Hmm.
if they did that, then it's game over. Then they win. If they have control over Taiwan Semiconductor, then we lost. That's like the if it's capture the flag, that's the flag. So whoever gets that wins. And right now we think we've got it because they're our business partner more so than China's. But China just has the geographic proximity to it and has the ability to a better military advantage to take it. And so that could be where we end up like converging is just in Taiwan.
Aren't there insane like I don't even think tariffs the right word. It might just be like restrictions, but on like Nvidia chips going into China, like don't we like not try and like limit the amount of like semiconductors and chips that China can get like heavily?
Yeah, because so we didn't used to do that up until there was a whole thing going on right before the pandemic that was not in the news at all, and I didn't learn about it till much later. But it really escalated in like 2019 because there was all these, you know how we're all spying on each other, right? The Chinese are spying on us, we're spying on them, no big deal.
Hmm.
But the somehow I think it was CIA or FBI or somebody discovered that the Chinese were just stealing all of our technological IP and making it themselves, and that's why they were able to grow so as quick as they were. Is every time when Apple comes up with a new iPhone, it manufactures in China, and they're just copying it and doing it. And so because of that, yeah, we put like all these bans on like technology, like doing business in China and stuff like that. And Nvidia is an American company, and so yeah, I don't know exactly what it is, but I mean, the tariffs are also for that reason. I think too is just because of like the tech stocks and the Nvidia stuff. But the thing is too is that so Nvidia, and this is a common misconception too that I just kind of came across recently. So Nvidia doesn't actually make any chips.
Really?
Taiwan Semi makes the chips. Nvidia is
Hmm.
a chip designer, so they design the architecture of the chips, and they're continuing to improve their design to have more computing power and stuff like that. But they don't manufacture anything.
So it's yet another case of it's like American intellectual property shipped
Mhm.
overseas and mass produced.
Yeah, right. So there's not like it's not like Nvidia has a bunch of infrastructure that they have that it would take
Right.
China a long time to build. It's just like, oh, as soon as they see it, they could just copy it, and now it's then they're just they can just produce it with their own.
So I know China like hasn't doesn't really play fair in terms of like intellectual property. I know there is some like there's some sort of like trade agreements wherein like they we share some like intellectual property with them in exchange for production capabilities. That being said, it really you can't blame China for the most part. Like you can only blame American companies when you give them the goose that lays the golden egg and then say like, "Oh, please keep your hands off of it. Like we're making boo-boo bucks off of this, but like you're the ones making it. Just please don't steal it from us." Like I feel like it falls more on us than them.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's just everyone acting in their own interest, and the interest just so happened to be, that it's cheaper to produce in China, and so a company acting in its own interest is going to go produce in China. And we for a long time thought that that was a good idea as a government because we thought that that would stop us from getting in a war with China because we're business partners. We can't go to war, which is kind of true when it comes to like a ground war. But what we didn't anticipate was how fast China was going to grow to become like to the point where they were getting close to where they might not even really need to be business partners with us because they're better than us. That was
Mhm.
something at the time that we were like, yeah, that's never going to happen because we did the same thing with like Japan, Korea, all these Asian countries where that was like the hot spot to go and produce there. It was low wages. It was pretty corporate friendly laws, and we just figured like, oh yeah, we've got all them as allies, and didn't anticipate that eventually one of them might become powerful enough to just be, become an enemy rather than an ally.
Mhm. Got anything more on that? Should we go to another one?
Yeah. What else you got?
What do we got here? Couple quick politics ones I saw. Did you see that Trump is advocating for reopening Alcatraz?
I did hear something about that. What's the context on that?
I here's the context is I believe there's no context. The context is we've got some bad guys here. It'll really send a message. We've got millions of rapists and drug traffickers and criminals that send a strong message to reopen Alcatraz. I the funny thing is, I saw something like the day before he announced this, PBS played like the movie like Escape from Alcatraz or something. So everyone's just like, dude, Trump definitely just like saw this movie and was like, and like, dude, we got to open this thing back up.
That
This is
is, he
awesome.
was just sitting on the couch watching
Yeah.
watching PBS. Was like, oh, that's a good idea. So what do you know? Like, I don't really know much about Alcatraz. So do you know like any of the background on it? Like what? I don't even know like when it was open or like what it was like.
I mean, dude, it shut down decades ago. I know it held like at the time I think was like all like the bootleggers and stuff. Like, like the Al Capone guys held all those guys who were
Oh,
doing
okay.
like prohibition style like uh bootlegging and just classic 1920s and 30s sort of buffoonery. But apparently it's like hasn't been used in decades. It's just a museum now. So people are that just lends credence to the anything that pops into Trump's head, he just like says and like tries to do at this stage is what it seems like. It's just completely on his ever changing whims is some of these policies that he's trying to drop.
I just threw it in the question to the overlords. Yeah, you're right. Al Capone was in there. There's a lot of mob guys in there. That it also I didn't realize it was this old. It's from the 1850s. They held Civil War, uh, like I guess I don't know, Confederate like
Yeah.
whoever was persecuted in the Civil War. Closed in 1963. General Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy closed it, and now Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s boy Donald Trump is gonna reopen it. He says, but I don't know. I do think, and I think we talked about this on the St. Patrick's Day episode that a lot of this shit that we're seeing, like are like the big attention grabbing headlines of Trump, is all just kind of like shiny objects he throws out there to keep people off of what he's actually doing. And it seems like he's still doing that a lot, and it makes a lot of sense why he keeps saying things. Like he'll be saying things and it'll be pissing me off because I'm like, dude, like this is not what we should be doing. And then it always seems to never go through. Like when he was talking about like firing Jerome Powell, I was like getting pissed about that one because I'm like, you can't be firing the Fed chair. And then, but then a couple of weeks later or a week later, he's like, oh no, I wasn't gonna fire him. Like I feel like he's just doing he's doing like his WWE kind of style of just putting on a show.
Yeah, it's I don't know, just all like pomp and circumstance. It seems like it's just like say whatever crazy thing pops into your head and then backtrack on it if it gets too much like bad attention, essentially.
Yeah, I do always wonder how much of it is, because obviously the left think of Trump as kind of like what you said, which is just like this just guy who just impulsively says whatever, doesn't think about it at all. And the right looks at him as like some 40 chess mastermind.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like reality is probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, I don't think he's just freestyling it, whatever he feels like this morning he's going to do. I think there's some method to the madness, but I don't know that he's like the the smartest man who ever lived, who's just steps ahead of everyone else, who's trying to analyze what he's doing.
Yeah. I don't know. One other politics one. This one just irked me. It's like so at towards the end of the Biden administration, like the economy was doing well. Trump was tweeting or not tweeting out, truthing out, saying like, "Oh, yeah, this is the Trump economy. This is everyone's so uh, believes so strongly in me that stocks are already doing so well. We're already seeing great increases in the stock market because they know that's what's going to happen in my time in office." And now he comes in, tariffs, the economy kind of tanks a little bit. And now his tune is, well, this is Biden's economy. I got handed a terrible shit economy. We're still recovering from all the damage that he did. So when Biden's in office, it's Trump's economy. When Trump's in office, it's Biden's economy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that one. That this is currently Trump's economy. The reason the stocks crashed was primarily because of the tariffs policies that Trump implemented. Now, I wouldn't say that Biden's economy was very good. It was actually pretty solid in the last year or so. And I do think that Trump in the first term had a good economy until COVID, obviously. And then I feel like in this term, I'm thinking that he will, by the time it's over, it'll have recovered well. The stock market's already recovered 100% from when it came down during the whole tariff debacle. But at the same time, to say that this is just another ridiculous thing that Trump does that drives me nuts, which is he goes on national television and announces this whether you like it or not, is like a very bold tariff plan that if actually implemented as he says it's going to destroy the global economy as we know it. In real time, you can watch as the stock market takes an absolute dive as he's talking on the screen, and then
Uh-huh.
then he comes out and says, "Yeah, this is Biden's fault." And it's like that one wasn't though. That one was definitely not.
Yeah.
But I mean, the correct response would have been like, "Hey, we're
We
gonna have
expected this to
the short term
happen.
pain,
Yeah,
the
right,
short term
right.
pain for long term gain." But stick with that one. Stick with that one. Don't
Yeah,
start saying, "Oh yeah, this is
right?
Biden's fault." Everyone knows it's not Biden. It doesn't.
Yeah.
You don't need to be a fucking investment expert to be like, "Yeah, no, this seems to have some correlation with what you just came on TV and said." Same with the tweets. We were talking about how he could just control the market with a tweet, which is
Uh-huh.
ridiculous. Like that this is definitely unprecedented times when it comes to like being able to make or break billions of dollars or trillions of dollars of stock market value by just like pressing a button on your phone is ridiculous.
Yeah, that is crazy. We talked about the volatility aspect, how somehow crypto was more stable in those weeks or whatever than stock market was. I mean, that's a glaring, shining beacon almost for the legitimacy of cryptocurrency, though.
Yeah, I think it is. And I haven't really heard many people talking about that either. That during that whole thing, I mean, crypto does correlate a little bit with the market. So when the market goes down, it tends to go down. But it used to be that like the stock market would go up 2% and crypto would be up 50%. And then when it would go down 2%, crypto would be down 50%. And
Uh-huh.
it's like now it's kind of the opposite. The stock market is going, some of these tech stocks are skyrocketing 20% in a day or in an hour. And Bitcoin has been just like, it's pretty steady. I mean, it's bounced from Bitcoin's bounced from like 80,000 to 100,000 back and forth over the past like 6 months. It's been, staying within the same 20% range
Uh-huh.
where the stock markets have been all over the place.
Yeah, it's crazy. Um, we got a new pope, Chicagoan pope. Pretty crazy.
Oh, I
The
didn't even realize that. He's from
Oh, you
Chicago?
didn't know? He's from Chicago. Yeah.
No, I didn't I saw it just like a quick post about the new pope. I knew he was from America, but didn't catch that he was from Chicago. Well,
Yeah. So
represent.
Chicago now officially has their first pope before their first 4,000-yard passer.
Nice. So
So
what's the deal with the pope? I don't know. I don't really know anything about the pope, honestly. I don't know what the pope even does.
he's the vicar of Christ on earth.
He's the middleman between us and God.
Yeah, he speaks with the authority of the church. Anything that he says is true, essentially. So like, a-
Ah, the
anything.
truth. He's the
Yes, he's
the
the
source of
arbiter,
truth.
the arbiter of truth.
Yeah, the
Anything
arbiter.
that he says is God's word. So the whole thing, right? Like you hear this one a lot. Like, why is fish not considered meat for like Lent purposes for Catholics? And it's because the Pope who declared this, his like family owned a fishery.
Yep.
So
Makes sense.
like
Oh
yeah.
yeah, that doesn't count. So,
So
does the
but
Pope actually have any like? Does the Pope really do anything, or is it more kind of just like the Queen
uh,
of England, or like kind of like a I don't know what you would call that, like a
a figurehead,
stand-in, yeah,
yeah.
figurehead, yeah,
Um, More so the Queen than than the Prime Minister for sure. But like the Pope is essentially responsible for like the direction the church is taking. So I forget. I think it was Benedict. I think that was the last one. People really liked him because he was like pretty like progressive, right? Like I think he was the one that said like in terms of gay marriage, if two people so love each other, who am I to say that that is not love, right? So like in a sense, like the Pope can kind of like sway the trajectory of like the church's opinions. So essentially, like what the Pope's job is kind of to like keep the church relevant,
he's
keep it like
basically like he's an influencer, right? He's like an
it,
Instagram influencer.
essentially, yeah, for like a billion people around the world.
Yeah, I mean it does seem like religion is in its I shouldn't say religion in general, but the the Christian Catholic Church, that type of thing, is kind of in its last days, maybe not its last days, but it's seen its heyday. It's
Oh yeah,
it's I
that's
don't
for
think it's
sure.
coming back. I don't think there's like going to be any future reawakening where the Gen Z or like the next generation is all about going to church.
I was thinking I could see a new like religious revival, but it would have to be of like a new religion essentially, some form
Yeah,
of like
yeah.
global like Unitarian, like religion that says basically like oh like we need to like come together for like everyone to like reshape like the future, right? Like I could see that happening, especially just with like smartphones. If like some it start off as a cult essentially, some like cult caught on, like that actually makes a lot of sense. Like why aren't we doing things like this way, right? I could kind of see that happening, but not so much a resurgence of like the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I wonder if I've thought about this a lot, and we might have talked about it before, but I wonder if we will see eventually a convergence somewhat of science and religion. Obviously, it would take like a new religion, it wouldn't be
Like
like, but like
yeah,
they were born from different realms, like religion was absolute truth, God says so, and science was like the opposite of that. It was like, now we got to prove this. But even science, it's all theory, right? Like Newton's theory of or Newton's law or whatever, but everything's theory. If you like, scientific method could disprove it at any time when we have new information. And so realistically, they're both just theories, but the problem with like the traditional religions, was that the scientific evidence is disproving a lot of the theories. So
Mm-hmm.
they can't both simultaneously exist. They butt heads. But if there were a new religion that stayed within the realm of what's scientifically possible, then they can somewhat converge. I think of simulation theory as like that could be, like
Mm-hmm.
technically it is very much scientifically possible for there to be a creator who created a simulation that we're living in, and that the simulation does have a purpose. And so like you can make a religion that's within science. They don't have to be opposites. And I think maybe we'll get something like that
I
in the
could
future.
definitely see like a new religion that isn't like a top-down religion, like kind of what you were saying, right? Like, here's the creator, here are the indelible rules that he has endowed us with, right? Because those are fault at can be at fault, but more like a bottom-up religion where it's like, all right, here's what like we believe, like these truths we think are self-evident, and then you like kind of like build that up to like a unified like form of thought, like a unified religion at that point essentially. Like, I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, something that could be somehow amendable so that like as new information comes out over the next, hundreds of years, it's like, all right, well, we can, oh yeah, we might have, in order for religion to last sustainably for like hundreds or thousands of years, there has to be a mechanism in which they can say like, oh yeah, we said that 100 years ago and we were wrong. That's the thing
Mm-hmm.
about science. That's like why it's going to be forever a very important field. Is like the whole point is to try to like prove ourselves wrong from last time. And where religion, it's like if you're really like a hardcore like radical like religion, you're like a I don't know what's the word, like you're evangelical, like all about like the exact words of the Bible. It's a lot, some of the purposes and the morals and stuff still apply today 100%, but some of the stuff in there is like that's probably not right, or some of it is like definitely not right because we've evolved since then and we realize now that that's not right. So if you're sticking by it despite the evidence,
Mm-hmm.
eventually it's going to phase itself out.
I think I said this on one of the other ones we did on religion, but the main difference between religion and science is that 1,000 years from now, say like a solar flare hits the globe. We lose all of our technology, right? We're thrust back into the Stone Age. We lose like all of our texts and everything, right? 1,000 years from now, all of religious texts will look completely different. New religions will be formed, new gods will be formed, new sets of rules will be formed. Once science comes back around, those scientific texts will look the same as the ones that we have today, right? That's the difference, is that, as you said, science is testable, science is repeatable, right? You can like determine things that will happen again and again and again versus just telling a top-down story, essentially telling like a narrative versus like building this like groundwork of narrative up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, actually. So I did hear it's kind of a counter to that, but not entirely. Like I think both can be true. But I went and saw Jordan Peterson live recently. It was a
Uh-huh.
nice experience. But he was talking about something pretty interesting, which is like the idea of like you know the idea of religion. Now, like I know you're not the biggest fan of like the Catholic Church and everything, but his point about Christianity, which seems to be somewhat true, is that it must have something right
Uh-huh.
because there has been many religions, and Christianity won. And so it's like, okay, so if religion is basically like your culture, it's similar to like a culture, especially back in the old days. And so, these people believe this culture, these people believe this religion, this religion, this religion, all these religions, and some of them died out quick, some of them lasted a while and died out, but then one emerged as like the global most common one. It's most likely that like, okay, so if you're looking at like survival and reproduction, evolutionary purposes, that's like, okay, the people who are living by that code seem to do the best, so there must be some underlying truth to it. But that doesn't mean that it's right. It just means that it was the best out of the other ones,
Uh-huh.
or at least is likely to be the best out of the other ones. But what I mean, what do you think that holds any? I think there's some truth to that.
There's something to it, absolutely, because we don't we don't get where we are today without shared beliefs, right? Without the idea that, you know, everyone that without whatever the shared beliefs are, it doesn't have to be that there's a guy in the sky watching you, and if you don't act morally, then you won't ever get into heaven, right? It can just be the fact that, all right, we all think like this is the same way, this is how you should like function as a civilization. You have to have some sort of narrative that people have to stick to. Otherwise, you cannot like progress. You can't keep going as a society. There has to be like a sort of like moral conviction among people that, all right, these are the right way to do things, right? If you don't have that, then you're not able to progress. You're not able to, build roads and civilizations, everything like that. So I do agree that there is certainly something to that. Uh, Religion was incredibly important to get us here, right? But I just think now we can like essentially change the narrative, right? We can build a new narrative, some form of like global humanist, uh, like ideal set as opposed to, like a top-down mandated set of rules.
Yeah, right. I think like you know common popular religions like Christianity and others were good for, like you said,
Right.
evolving societies and doing all that. But the thing is too is that it's we're now in an entirely different landscape than we were during those times where this was good principles to live by and it tended to
Uh-huh.
lead to success. Like I do think there was a time where if you were like, very faithful Christian and you live by the morals of the Bible, then you would live a successful, happy life. And because it was designed in the world, and that's why it did so well. But now the world has changed. That's
Uh-huh.
what the landscape has changed. The field that we're playing on has changed, and so there's things that exist now that didn't exist, and so chain reactions happen, and now there's no now it's just not as valuable anymore to a lot of people. To some people, it still is, but because of that, because the landscape is changing, maybe we need to change the rule book, and adapt with it. I think that's pretty good one. You said
Uh-huh.
humanist, and that just reminded me kind of a different topic, but so I was reading something about how back in the day, 10 years ago or something, um, Elon was at a party with I believe it was Larry Page, the one of the founders of Google, and they used to be buddies, and they're not anymore because of they got in a heated argument about because Elon claimed to be a humanist, and Larry Page said that that's dumb to be a humanist. Why would you be speciesist? Saying that like to be in favor of humanity over at the time they're talking about AI and like technology and the machines. Larry Page's point was basically like, why do you think humans are any more valuable than a sentient machine? That's the same as racism. That's speciesist. And I just thought that was like such a crazy, like that's what they got in a fight about, and they're no longer friends. That's
Well, that
hilarious.
I was gonna say that is an insane thing to like break off a friendship over. That like that's kind of just objectively funny. I have kind of had that same thought though, wherein like I don't really think that like humans are more important than like other types of animals. So I've had that thought before. Like I think on a cosmic scale, we matter just as much as like a squirrel.
Well, I don't know. I guess it kind of depends. I don't know that I necessarily agree. I think that humans are more valuable than animals. But I mean, it's a tough question, really, because it's like, well, valuable to what? Like, what are we
Right,
optimizing for? I
right.
think if when it comes to like, it depends what the goal is. So I think one of the things that like Elon and like a lot of the tech guys, their goal is it's aside from making money is to eventually like evolve into a Elon talks about multi-planetary species. They're trying to grow outward into the galaxy, learn more information about what's out there, that type of thing. And in order to do that, we need to make the machine. So in that, if that's your goal, then humans are more valuable than squirrels because we're the ones that make the machines. But
Yes.
but by that logic, then Larry Page is right. Once the machines are made and they don't need us, then we're not valuable at all. So it's like there
Right.
is. I've heard a lot of people mention about how like they like humans are basically. I heard the phrase. Can't remember from who, but like humans are the reproductive organs of the machines. Basically, where like our job, we're kind of like bees that spread pollen and grow flowers, We're like we're just really here to like take all of these natural resources and put them together and make something better than us so that it could go out and do whatever the actual purpose of life is, you know?
Hmm. And that the question essentially becomes, well, what is the purpose of life? You know, if there really is one, right? When I said on like a cosmic scale, I don't think humans are any better than squirrels. That's because like I don't really think the universe has like a grand design, you know, has like a grand, this is what you should be doing, right? I think it's just kind of there. I think we're just kind of here. I think squirrels are just kind of here, right? And in that aspect, like all life is basically equivalent if there is no grand plan, no grand purpose.
I'm asking I'm asking the overlords what is the purpose of life? Calculating,
42.
calculating. 42. You know how I was going with that. 42. Um, I was hoping it would say 42. It didn't. It gave me a bunch of ideas, but
Yeah.
none of them as good as 42.
What does it say?
Uh, it's kind of what we were saying, just talking about. It depends what your perspective is.
Yeah.
Biological perspective, survival and reproduction.
Yeah.
Humanist, philosophical perspective, create meaning. So the meaning is to create meaning, I
Create
guess.
your own meaning.
Uh, religion is to serve the divine.
Hmm.
Scientific is none inherently. That's kind of an interesting one. I would have thought that like the scientific perspective would have said the meaning of life is to like find truth or something like that.
Hmm.
But they're saying it's there is none. Pragmatic functional perspective is act with intentionality. All kind of just nothing really. Everything kind of like cliche there, I guess.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's kind of all you're left with is cliche when you're talking about this question. You know, it's kind of just what you believe, really.
Yeah, no, yeah, it is. I mean, I think there's some. I guess this is kind of like how religion started, is people trying to figure out the answer to this question. I think there's some that are like most people could probably agree that that's partially, there might not be just like, like this is the purpose, but there's some things where it's like, okay, yeah, that's definitely better than doing the other thing. Like it's better to not just like instantly try to like fight everyone you see or something like part of the purpose is to like get along with other people or like
Uh,
shit like that where it's like all right, most people could probably agree on that. But then when it comes to like what's the purpose of the collective, like humans, animals, machines, the combined effort, I don't know. I mean, it seems like there's something though. It seems like we do have a like there is a it's not
some
all just
form,
random. It doesn't
some
seem like there's some
trajectory.
there's some trajectory. Yeah, it seems like it at least, but I'm sure uh, you know I'm sure there's that large possibility that that's just you know part of the illusion. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of what you were saying. Like that is where religion stems from. It was us looking around 8,000, 10,000 years ago, whatever, saying, why are we here? Like how did we get here? How did we become like sentient and, essentially masters of our universe? Because we looked around and said, we're the only ones who are capable of like changing our environment to our need, essentially. So then all the all the stories start stemming from like, oh, like this is who put us here, this is why we're here, right? And that's what the moral like fabric started from, essentially, was just stories.
Yeah, it still kind of is too. It is still just stories. Like I think we were
All of
like evolved
society
to
all of
think in so
society is a story.
like the way humans were evolved, like where our brain is like designed to think in terms of like stories. So we try to make like we naturally just like turn everything into a story. Like when I think of
This is a
I
Jordan
and
Peterson thing for sure. I
it
know.
is, yeah, yeah,
This is one of the
100%.
things I agree with him with on is humanity's inherent need for a story. Like I think that's probably like what brought us out of like our dark age, out of the caves, is us communicating with each other, being able to tell a story like, hey, what if we moved out of these caves down towards that river where all the water and animals are, and we're able to like live there? And then just kind of keeps going, snowballs from there.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And you know, that 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 could be part of it too. Is if you that's one of those things that has always worked for us. That's why we're the dominant species on the planet so far until the machines take over. But we're getting to a point where it's no where the landscape has changed where because stories thinking of things in stories used to be like a very valuable skill. It would be like, oh yeah, like it would have the stories would have like underlying morals. So you tell back in like the hunter gatherer days, you tell like a story about some brave guy and that would inspire the other guys to try to go and that would increase the survival. But now we are getting more where if we a lot of things are just data, and like so, story of history, very recent one, Donald Trump's 2024 election win, comeback story, absolute populist, like charismatic, like kind of a wrecking ball in the political machine. That's a great story. What if you were to ask me, what do you think about 10 years from now? What do you remember about the 2024 election? I would hopefully still remember like, oh yeah, they tried to put him in jail, then he got out of jail, debated Joe Biden, won, got shot in the head. Like I would tell the story, but what I
Hmm.
wouldn't remember is like what percentage of votes he got. I wouldn't remember the data, what counties he lived. That's all data, and we're becoming more of like a data-driven world rather than like a story. Like the stories matter less when it's all just zeros and ones in your computer, kind of.
Hmm. Yeah, that is interesting. Like the need for a narrative to be placed behind things might diminish when you just have so much of the raw data.
Yeah, right. Like if like I think like the way AI works, it's not like it. If you were to write here's an intro to a story and pick up where I left off to AI. It's not like the AI actually like knows what the story is about, really. It's just like, piecing together data points from all
Previous
the internet
stories.
and then
Hmm.
like mathematically calculating what's going to come next. It's just all math. There's no actual like narrative or anything. And as AI is running more and more like it almost kind of I don't know if it disproves the idea that there is a set story trajectory. It kind of seems like it's all just data points that the way our brains work, we turn them into a story, even though there
Right.
might not actually really be a story. Kind of an
That's
interesting
that.
philosophical
That's it.
rabbit hole we can go down on that.
I mean, that's a huge part of human psychology. Is just like we're a pattern seeking species. So when we get all of that raw data input into our brain, it has to process it some way. The way it does that is it tells you you tell yourself a story essentially, right? It's like, oh,
Right.
like you take all of these different inputs, plug them in. This is the result, and why is it the result? Is how your brain like kind of starts like weaving together that fabric of the story. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I mean, picture something like this. Like, so say hunter gatherer days we're talking about. So like, if it, I'm the hunter that came back to the tribe with like a massive stash of like the most valuable berries, right? And I'm gonna tell the story. So I tell the story like, yeah, so I'm doing this. I tell the whole story, and then like I looked up at the sky or something, and I saw a cloud that looked like God pointing me this way towards this tree that had you know uh, the tree that had whatever six
so
branches.
many berries, yeah.
And then I went over there, and it seemed like nothing at first, but then I saw all these berries. It's like the story. But what really actually happened, like he attributes it to like, I God gave me a message that sent me to this tree that had all the berries. But really, what likely happened is that in his subconscious mind, he saw the tree that had six branches, and his subconscious mind calculated like, okay, in the past, 90% of the trees with these type of branches or these type of leaves had berries. So it's like better check. But he didn't even think that way. I wonder how much of that is going on now with all these people who are experts who think that they're doing it all the right way. It's really just like subconscious data points that are just being processed into stories, like you said.
Yeah, it's crazy. Got one more written down here. It's a pretty good one, and I think maybe we can call it for this episode, maybe. But I was out earlier, and so I'll start with this question, which I think I'll know the answer to. Then I'll change it a little bit. Do you think we should have a right to privacy?
That's a good question. I think so. Yeah, Generally, yes. That's one of the things
Right.
that's like it went. That's one of the things that slipped in because the system was built at a time where it was kind of like a given of like, it's like the idea of a police officer needs to have a warrant to come into your house. That was the idea of the right to privacy. I don't think anyone envisioned the fact that like all these companies and the government and everything would have all these devices that are monitoring you all the time in your house that you chose to put there because you either didn't know or didn't care that they were taking all your data. I mean, yes, and I think we do have a right technically to privacy, whereas like the companies can't take our data without our permission, but we all just don't read the terms and conditions and sign them anyway, and then we basically get rid of that right.
So I'm pretty sure, like in the Constitution, it's not explicitly stated anywhere that you have a right to privacy. And kind of what you were saying, like back in the day, it was essentially like assumed you have a right to privacy, right? You're in your house, right? Like people can't know what you're doing at all times. Now people can know what you're doing at all times. They can know damn near your every thought depending on like what you type into your phone. So my corollary question was, to what level should we have a right to privacy? Like how much privacy should we have?
I mean,
It's
I
a hard
think
hard question.
in your own home, if you're in a property that you own or that I mean, if you rent it, like I don't think like I don't know whether this is legal or not, but like for example, if you're in like a hotel room or an Airbnb or renting an apartment from a landlord, and I don't, even though they own the property, I don't think they should be able to like monitor what you're doing, whether it's through audio or visual or whatever. I'm sure that that's got to be illegal, at least in a lot of cases. But like stuff like that, I think if you don't know you're being watched, then you shouldn't be able to be watched unless you're in like a public place or something.
Right. So there is like Airbnbs. Uh, I've seen like news stories about like people finding like hidden cameras. That's definitely illegal. Like you're not allowed to like film someone indoors, I believe, without their consent. So
Yeah.
that's a thing. But then, the question, like the higher level, like philosophy behind it, basically all evil stems from privacy, right? Like, should you be allowed to look up on the internet, like how to make bombs, right? Like what's the best vantage point that I won't be seen from the White House third floor window, right? Like
Hmm. That is
that's
a good
kind of
point,
that's
actually.
like
Yeah.
the surveillance state question it becomes, but like what, so then that's why why I framed the question as what level of privacy should we have, because most people would agree, all right, you shouldn't be allowed to like look up how to spread diseases, right, how to cause like a even worse global pandemic, or you shouldn't probably be allowed how to make nitroglycerin, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I do agree that yeah, like having a lack of privacy is not necessarily only a bad thing where, you know, some people they're probably better off if they're not left to their own like here's all the information in the world, do what you want with it and no one's gonna know. But I was thinking too when it comes to like obviously we don't want people making bombs and stuff like that, but I'm also kind of not really very much in favor of having for one, I don't know that it's even possible, but like having like restrictions on the internet. Like I
Right.
know
So,
China
so,
does that,
so
but
what information should we not allow people to have? Like, right? What's the level? Like, all right, you're not allowed to look up how to make nitroglycerin. Should you be allowed to look up how to best form political protests? Right? Like how to best like mobilize a group of people to, like enact change? That would be something that they probably wouldn't want us knowing.
yeah, I mean, and so I started thinking like, okay, well, so I think you shouldn't be able to know things about like people or organizations that aren't intentionally put out into the public by them. So like if I, snuck into your phone and looked at your private notes and found something about you and I put it up on the internet, like there's I don't know if there's a law against that, but there should be some you shouldn't be able to do that. But I was gonna say like whatever someone intentionally puts up should be good. So like if I looked up how to make a bomb I should be able to have my privacy that I look that up, but it should be the person who posted it on the internet who gets, who gets in trouble. But then that comes down and it's like I'm thinking about it and I'm like, but that also is just free speech. If I, like
Right.
if
That's
I know how to make a bomb and I post it on the internet, have I done anything illegal? I don't know. That it's like we we're in an era where like all of the old rules are just so abstract because of the new landscape that we're in, where it's like that comes kind of back to the free speech
here's
thing, which is like,
here's here's the philosophy. So someone, some domestic terrorist, whoever, some mentally disturbed person looks up how do I make nitroglycerin. They find a link. They go out and they put a bomb in like a hospital and it blows up, kills a ton of people. Who's at fault? The guy who made the bomb, the guy who posted the link, or the government that allowed you to look up how to make a bomb?
yeah, but I mean, then it goes down to it. There, it goes even more because then, okay, so say the government made it illegal, or you can't look that up. Well, what would they also have to do then? They'd have to like make it illegal to own a VPN, or like they'd have to try to like put up barriers
Mhm.
so people can't get around the system. And then, next thing you know, it's like you've got like the Chinese firewall where they're like in China, they can't even see anything that's
Anything about
posted on the internet
Tiananmen
outside of
Square?
China. Yeah, they can't see any of that. Like it's, that's basically like the government owns the internet there. Then we get to that point. I think that's scary. I think one of the biggest values of the internet was that it's like unowned, it's not controlled by like one company or one government so there's no solutions, only trade-offs. So there's pros
Uh-huh.
and cons to both sides. But yeah, there's definitely maybe that's what the upcoming crisis will be about is about how the government wants to step in on the internet. I'm actually kind of surprised the internet's been around so long and the government hasn't overstepped on it too much yet, at least here
Yeah, that we know of, I
that
guess,
we know
right?
of.
I don't know.
How about like have you been seeing all the stuff in the UK where they're like people are getting arrested for like posting memes and shit?
Yeah, if you like, essentially, if you like trigger someone, you can like get fined or like arrested
Yeah.
or something.
See, that's why I mean that's why people here like the right, like the MAGA crowd gets super kind of sensitive about people getting banned on Twitter and like free speech and stuff is because that is not ideal if that's actually what's going on where like I could post a meme criticizing someone and then they could just press charges on me. Like I don't think we want to get to that point.
No, I mean, yeah, that's I have seen that, and I'm like, okay, that's real bad. That's real
Yeah,
bad.
you don't want that. It has to be like ingrained into the system of like a rigid rule. Otherwise, it's just a matter of time before someone gets in power and starts using it, slippery slope deal where they just start taking it. If you can ban this guy from Twitter and arrest him because of something he tweeted, because it was deemed offensive or something, then like when the next guy gets in, boom, 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 all these guys, they're all offensive, they're going to jail, and then next thing you know, it's like free speech is out the window. You now have like a tyrannical, like top down speech police. That is a possibility. So I hope it doesn't go there.
Yeah, stuff. What do you think? Call it there?
Yeah, I think we call it there. That was pretty solid hour and a
Yeah,
half there to start off the new wave of episodes here. We haven't had one in a while. Took a little break there. We try to do that every couple months, after 10, 15 episodes. But we're back in business. So thanks for tuning in.
sounds good. Thanks, everyone.